Welcome to the web-based training module of the National AgrAbility Project. My name is Samuel Matthew. This module introduces you to the Individualized Plan for Employment or IPE in vocational rehabilitation process. This is an independent training module. Other modules regarding vocational rehabilitation services with reference to AgrAbility customers are available to view and download the National AgrAbility Project website www.agrability.org. Any questions can be directed to the email address or phone number shown on the last slide of this presentation. Please take a moment to read the sentence on the left side of your screen. I will read that out to you now. If you need a transcript of this presentation due to a hearing impairment, please contact bng@ecn.purdue.edu or call toll-free 1-800-825-4264. In this training module, you may hear vocational rehabilitation services being referred to as VR or walk rehab. Vocational rehabilitation counselor may be referred to as VRC or just the counselor. In each state, VR services are offered under an agency with a different name, but you can find the information in the state government website by searching the phrase vocational rehabilitation. The module objectives of this training module are as follows. At the end of the module, you will be able to define Individualized Plan for Employment or IPE and describe how and when IPE is prepared during the VR process for a customer. You will be able to describe the different general responsibilities of customer and VRC as written in the IPE. There may be additional specific clauses written as deemed necessary by the VRC for your customer. You will be able to identify and describe cautions to be exercised when receiving services under IPE. Also, you will be able to explain how IPE can be amended if the customer or the VRC consider it necessary to achieve the employment goal. At the end of the module, the appeal process is explained briefly in case the customer feels the need to appeal any VR decision regarding services. What is IPE? Individualized Plan for Employment or IPE is a formal document signed by the customer and the VRC representative, sometimes the VRC counselor or the supervisor or both. The document is the blueprint of VR services to the customer. IPE is prepared in a standard format based on a template. The title is the vocational goal or employment outcome for the customer. The title is selected from a list of job categories from the federal government job database, and sometimes may not exactly match the customer choice. But this is of no great consequence as the VR counselor will be able to edit and make the change as required. The services are listed one by one with the start date and the service provider. The proposed date to achieve the employment goal is also listed. Comparable services like medical insurance programs, college financial aid programs will be listed as VR considers the other options of funding first. Responsibility of the customer and VR are listed with the details of how progress of the plan is measured. The IPE also may contain details of the appeal process, and there will be space at the end for the VR and customer to sign. The customer is given a copy of the final approved plan, and the customer should keep this as a record for future reference. IPE is similar to IEP in schools for children with special needs. The document is concise and is focused towards employment, and since the customer is an adult, the responsibilities are geared towards individual ownership. IPE is prepared in consultation with the customer as per his or her informed choice. The customer chooses an employment agency for searching for jobs. A meeting with the employment specialist or ES is mandatory before preparing the IPE. If the customer is self-employed, as in the case of most farmers, a business plan is required to be approved before preparing the IPE. VR offers guidance through its partners to prepare business plans. AgrAbility staff is often called to assist farmers to prepare business plans. Local small business development centers may be another resource in preparing business plans. IP has to be reviewed annually by VRC by calling the customer and discussing the progress. Adjustment and amendments are to be done by the VRC based on the review. IP is prepared by the VRC only after eligibility and severity categories. That is category 1, 2, or 3, also known as MSD, SD, and NSD is determined. These topics are covered by another training module available on the AgrAbility website and for online viewing and downloading, and hence not covered here. Before preparing the IPE, all assessments like physical functional evaluation, psychological evaluation, AT assessment, FAM assessment, or any other assessment should be completed, and the report should be available for VRC to review. Specific recommendations from the assessment are taken into consideration when preparing the IPE. The services listed in IPE are prepared after discussion with the customer as per his or her informed choice. How IPE is prepared? VRC reviews the assessments and reports and recommendations before preparing the IPE. VR also has to prepare a detailed case note which is auditable. The supervisor reviews the case note and the IPE before approving the IPE. Once the IPE is approved, a copy is sent to the customer for records. The components of the IPE are listed on the slide. Vocational goal, services and service providers, service start date and employment outcome dates, costs and comparable benefits from other sources, responsibility of VR and VRC, and the customer, how progress will be measured, appeal and cap information, signature by customer, VRC, and the supervisor. The customer responsibilities are listed so that the customer follows through the services and receives the services and makes progress toward employment. It is important for the customer to update the VRC periodically. Any change in address or contact information is primarily important. VR may close the case if the customer is not contactable. Progress reports are important too. Any change in the health status will be helpful for making amendments to IPE as required. The key phrase here is be actively involved in the VR process. With the VRC having hundreds of cases to serve, the individual customer's active participation and involvement is key to successful rehabilitation using VR services. The VR counselor responsibilities are also listed on IPE as shown in this slide. These include provide guidance and counseling, provide referrals to other services as required, authorize services in a timely manner, respond to customer queries, and review IPE annually. It is important to understand how VR system works with respect to providing services. So here are a few cautionary notes on VR and IPE. Unless and until a service is approved and authorization for the same is issued from VR, Customers should not initiate services. Even if discussions are over, it is important to have approval signature from VR. Any changes in services have to be informed to VRC so that he or she can change the IPE and do reauthorizations. This may be frustrating for some customers, but this is an accepted procedure in VR. If the customer requires a change in service, he or she can call the VRC and request a change. The VRC may have to meet with the customer, have more data and reports, but the customer is free to ask for amendment at any point in the VR process. If additional assessments are required, VR will pay for the assessments. But VR looks forward to cases where the IPE has very clear services and the customer achieves employment quickly so that 26 or a successful closure is achieved. The VR counselors have a target number of 26 cases or successfully closed cases required as a part of their annual job performance objective. So any VRC will be excited to have a 26 closure for their clients. If the customer feels that the VR decision about services are not appropriate and or justified, the decision can be appealed at 3 levels. The first is the office supervisor level. The supervisor meets with the customer to review the IPE and determine if any facts are not taken into account. If the decision by the supervisor is not acceptable to the customer, he or she can appeal further and the VR office will facilitate an independent mediator to resolve the issues. If this is also not acceptable to the customer, the CAP or Client Assistance Program can be approached. This is an independent state agency and hears the case by VR as well as the customer to resolve issues. Another training module on CAP will be available on the agrability.org website for viewing and for downloads. This is the end of the IPE module. Please feel free to contact at the displayed address or toll-free number to ask questions, provide comments, or suggestions. Thank you for your time. Hope this module has been helpful in enhancing your understanding of the VR IPE process.